Good morning, and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. We're a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your identities are welcome here. Special welcome to visitors and newcomers. We're glad you're here. There's a preschool playroom open anytime for young ones and classes for kids, following the time for all ages. All are welcome. And today, between services, there is a rehearsal for our Chalice Choir for young singers who will be singing on June 4th. So you can gather if you'd like to join. If you hadn't signed up, you can gather here about 10:30 up here in the sanctuary with Joe for a quick rehearsal. It'll be fun, easy to join in. So all are welcome for that. And you can join us after service downstairs each week in the Commons for refreshments and conversation, where you can find ways to get involved. And in your order of service, there is information about upcoming events and save-the-date opportunities. Special note, next week we switch to our summer schedule with one service only each week at 10 a.m. And that lasts for the entire summer through Labor Day. And then the following Sunday, June 4th, is a big Sunday. It's our annual ritual transition to summer with our flower communion service, where all are invited to bring a flower for our communal bouquet. So that will be followed by the annual meeting. So we'll have the flower communion, a brief snack potluck downstairs in the Commons, and then the annual meeting. So that June 4th is Bring a Flower and Bring a Snack Sunday to share. So I hope to see you there June 4th. And each week, our offering goes out our doors to support our values in the community. For May, we're collecting for P-Fund Transcend campaign in support of trans, non-binary, and gender-expansive youth. You can give as the plates pass. Thank you for your generosity. And this Wednesday evening is our last indoor Tupper Supper. You can join us for supper, followed by choir and youth group and children's activities and a forum. This week's forum is with the Wide Welcoming team and specifically the Hansen family, sharing about their gender identity journey. So a beautiful and gracious sharing. So supper's at 5:30, the forum at 6:15. Excuse me, need a little water. All are welcome. And Wednesday suppers will continue in a different format throughout the summer. You can bring your own meal to a picnic at 5:30 each week at 3 Links Park, all summer long, Wednesday evenings, near Silver Lake Pool, so you can join us for that near the playground. Today, we're glad to welcome our guest musician joining our musicians here, vocalist Mike Jensen. Thank you for being here this morning. We're glad to have you. And finally, between services today, we're going to celebrate and wish begrudgingly farewell to Austin Ferguson downstairs in the Commons, who's beginning a new position in June at Calvary Episcopal Church downtown. Austin's last Sunday officially is next Sunday, but we're celebrating today. Thank you, Austin, for sharing your gifts of music over these years. Today we're glad to hear several of Austin's favorite hymn tunes as part of our service, so you can join us after service downstairs in the Commons for that. On this Pride Sunday here in Rochester, we're grateful to the Wide Welcoming team for hosting a wonderful Pride booth all day yesterday. And we're proud of our history of being a welcoming congregation for LGBTQIA+ people for decades. And in these days, may we continue to work for a world that is in need of expansive inclusion, both in laws and in love. So in that spirit, we enter this time of worship. I invite you to take a breath with these words from our minister in the 1870s, the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes. May our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together. In just a moment, the music will call us back for our opening hymn, which is in the gray hymnal. But I invite you now to rise in body or spirit, greet those around you, and greet those online as well.
Our chalice line is taken by Walt Whitman's I Sing the Body Electric. I have perceived that to be with those I like is enough. I stop in company with the rest at evening is enough. To be surrounded by beautiful, curious, breathing, laughing flesh is enough. To pass among them or touch anyone or rest my arm ever so lightly around his or her neck for moments. What is this then? I do not ask any more delight. I swim in it as it's in a sea. There is something in staying close to men and women and looking on them, and in the contact and odor of them that pleases the soul well. All things please the soul, but these please the soul well. And so, surrounded by beautiful, curious, breathing, laughing flesh, we light our chalice.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the children or anybody else who'd like to come forward up. So, has anybody gone down a rabbit hole when they're like trying to research something and I'm sure that's never happened to anybody in here? So as I was researching for today's Time for All Ages, I knew we were going to be talking about pride, and I knew that we're going to be talking about gender nonconforming, non-binary, all that stuff. And it brought me, how far back do you think it brought me? Like how far, like the 1980s? Ancient Egypt? Elin for the win. It brought me back to ancient Egypt. I know, you get an A for that one. Back in that time, there were, we know we're familiar with pharaohs who were men, but then there was, except Cleopatra, but there was a woman who became pharaoh, but took on a lot of the characteristics and the dress and the adornments that male pharaohs did. So that was, I don't know when that came in the whole Cleopatra thing, but that was something that happened. And actually you could probably, no, my timeline is crazy, but another thing that I came across was, who knows who Loki is? My friend's dog. That's funny. I know a dog named Loki too. So for those of you who know who Loki is, the trickster god in Norse mythology, if you've seen a Marvel movie, just forget that. Loki is of no relation to anybody in the Marvel movies. In fact, we don't even know where Loki came from. But Loki was a trickster god, and decidedly a god, not a goddess. Except Loki could shapeshift. And it was well accepted that Loki would often shapeshift into a woman, to the point where Loki disappeared, came back as a woman, and gave birth to Odin's 8-legged horse. Yeah. So there's like no two ways about this, right? Clearly back in the day, they thought, I know I have all sorts of confused faces right here. I really wish you could see them. There was no doubt that Loki, who was decidedly a trickster god, shapeshifted to a woman, and it was part of the tales that they told. So it wasn't even until way fast forward to much more recent times, not quite the 1980s, but let's go to 1900, late 1800s, 1900s. And all babies wore white. It was all gender-neutral clothing. Why? Well, no, they did after they were born, because this was very gendered time, so we would know that. But white was easy to bleach. So you have a baby that gets dirty and you're going to bleach it. So I found this picture. Not the baby. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Bleach the clothes, not the baby. So this is mostly for the kids. But here's a picture of a very famous person. So if you were just to look at this, would you assume that this was an assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth? Female. What if I told you this is Franklin Delano Roosevelt? What? Yeah, because this was very common it was just a practical matter for them, for babies, kids, toddlers, to wear skirts and not pants. They didn't have elastic back then. You either had to tie it or button it. I don't even know if they had the zipper. I don't know, when was the zipper invented? That's another rabbit hole I need to go down. But, what? Find out next week. But my point is that, there was a certain time when things it was much more easy to have gender-neutral clothing. And then after World War II, the 1940s, is when they started really saying, like, oh, pink is for girls and blue is for boys. But yeah, we all know that. I mean, for those of you in the back, we're getting like all the head shakes here. Because colors aren't assigned to a gender, right? And we kind of see this ebb and flow throughout time. And there was a time when gender-neutral clothing was just the way it was, and that was like the 1970s, because I would imagine a lot of the female empowerment movement, and so there's not the gendering of the clothing. And then the 1980s, it was the working woman, you know, where you can wear a dress and look feminine, but still like run a corporation and wear pink. So then that kind of comes in, and now we're kind of in that part where gender-neutral clothing is much more common. So throughout history, things have never been static. You know what that means? They've never stayed the same. There have always been changing expectations about what quote-unquote men and quote-unquote women would wear. But what should we wear? Anything. What we're comfortable in, right? Definitely. Even going back to when men wore high heels. Yeah. It's just the way it works. So, we're going to go and do a couple activities. While Austin plays the children's benediction, we will head out. Thanks for going down the rabbit hole with me. It was fun.
So when Luke asked me to give a reflection today, I started with Walt Whitman's Body Electric. And it's interesting, the rabbit hole that I went down, because I landed with Neil Donald Walsh saying, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. So on a particular Sunday, I leaned close to my sister to whisper my surprise at what I was seeing, and quickly became aware of the other 30-plus people doing the same. Our collective whispers became voluminous, and I became embarrassed. I became uncomfortable. You see, there was a lesbian couple walking to the baptismal font with their two small brown children. My discomfort heightened as the minister's voice cut through the congregation's hum, then slowly dissipated as I witnessed this beautiful family, seemingly unaware of the whispers, present in this sacred place. Later that day, my sister and I spoke at length about our experience that morning. We talked about our awareness that this family didn't look like us, yet it existed in our white congregation. We talked about how we thought these two moms might have felt as the congregation reacted to their presence. We talked about our embarrassment and our discomfort, and it was okay. We knew we were on a journey. We talked about how we would show our love to the family the following Sunday. I share this experience to illustrate how embracing discomfort can lead us to progress from simple tolerance to acceptance onto inclusion. When asked to differentiate between these terms, I like to describe tolerance as freedom of bigotry. One might describe a tolerant person as open-minded or open to considering change. The journey from tolerance to acceptance requires recognizing the situation is not going to change and that you don't control it. I like to give forgiveness of self in particular, a leading role in stepping into acceptance. The journey from acceptance to inclusion requires appreciation, or what I like to call gratitude. When we include someone, it is to intentionally pursue ways to make them feel welcome, heard, and valued. My brother, Craig Hayden, is not Walt Whitman, but he has a similar talent. He wrote a poem for me to share today. He entitles it, Wayshower of Discomfort. Self-awareness is essential to remove binding chains. Looking for answers out there only feeds pain. Discomfort, we'll see, is only a pointing. Its cause is not real, hinders anointing. We'll struggle to let go of an identity in thought, to allow the emptying out so love can be taught. It's actually a remembering of who I really am, the image, the likeness, in the love that I swim. Letting go absolutely will bring us to knowing what the wayshower of discomfort has always been showing. My sister and I still talk about the experience that Sunday, many decades ago. You see, this was way before I came out as my true self, lesbian, and that she became the mother of a trans child.
In gratitude, we'll receive today's offering.
When I think of all the times the world was ours for dreaming, when I think of all the times the earth seemed like our home, every heart alive with its own longing,
invite you to take a deep breath. Breathe deep the breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning. Above you the sky, and beyond that the stars shining with their ancient light, holding you in this moment, this breath. You yourself made of earth and stars. Know that in this house you are named, you are known as beloved, as sacred. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God and Gaia of many names and beyond all naming. Perhaps we are always at a threshold. Transitions in life and circumstance, thresholds in relationships and identities, in seasons and years and schools and jobs, each day, each moment, both an invitation or a simple necessity of life continuing to unfold. Some thresholds we work toward for what seems like forever. Some rush up and might surprise us. Some we know are coming and we try to hold on as long as we can. Help us find our center in these in-between moments. Between what has been and what is yet to be, between then and now and not yet. May we find enough grace and enough compassion to feel held in love in all these spaces between. To know that we are always in process, never a stagnant completion, but always in motion, always becoming. May we be kind with ourselves and caring for each other, to find love at each place along the journey, including right now. We hold in our hearts this day all those who suffer in mind, body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names that you're holding in your own heart this day in joy or sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all the names spoken and unspoken, may we all be held in love and grace. These words of meditation are entitled Flower Song by Francisco Alarcon. Every tree a sibling, every hill a pyramid, a holy spot, every valley a poem in flower and in song, every cloud a prayer and every raindrop a miracle, every body a seashore, a memory at once lost and found. We are all together, fireflies in the night, dreaming up the cosmos. May it be so. Amen.
The first reading is from Twilight People by Rabbi Reuben Zellman. As the sun sinks and the colors of the day turn, we offer a blessing for the twilight. For twilight is neither day nor night, but in between. We are all twilight people. We can never be fully labeled or defined. We are many identities and loves, many genders and none. We are in between roles, at the intersection of histories, or between place and place. We are crisscrossed paths of memory and destination, streaks of light and swirled together. We are neither day nor night. We are both, neither, and all. May the sacred in-between suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, and widen our vision. May this in-between light illuminate our way to a God who transcends all categories and definitions. May the in-between people who have come to pray be lifted up into this twilight. We cannot always define. We can always say a blessing. Blessed are you who brings on the twilight. The second reading is A Protest and a Party by Reverend Hannah Roberts Villeneuve. People sometimes ask, is pride a protest or a party? And the answer is, of course, yes. And why not? Why not rejoice as we resist, dance as we demand change, celebrate as we create community that delights in all of us, in all of who we are? So bring all of that with you. Bring your policy demands. Bring your glitter. Bring your Supreme Court broken heart. Bring your rainbow socks. Bring the emptiness you feel for our siblings gone too soon. Bring your Gloria Estefan remix. Bring your tender hope for change. Bring your most garish eyeshadow. Bring your spirit, tattered and battered by a world that seems insistent on choosing fear and hate. Gather up all these things and bring them here, to a place where we don't have to shoulder these burdens or celebrate these joys alone.
In the deserts of life I'll not
I can remember the way that the footsteps tracked along the carpet, and how the southern sun would faintly shine through the small square window in the front door. I can remember how in one corner was a wooden cabinet with the plates only for special occasions. And you could go to the right, to the small room, and sit on the couch near the TV, or you could go to the left to sit by the large window overlooking the road. Or, as I often did, you could turn around and go back into the kitchen for another special K-bar that was on the counter, or you could try to discern if those were raisins or chocolate chips mixed with the oatmeal cookie in the jar, and if you were willing to take a chance. The place where I often found myself at family gatherings was in this in-between space. Literally this in-between room in my grandparents' home. And most of the time, it was also a space between the genders that had gathered there, where typically to the left were the women in one room talking about family and people in town, and then typically to the right were the men on the side talking about plumbing and watching some game, not always completely segregated, but mostly, at most in my early memories. And more often than not, I found myself, when not roaming back into the kitchen for a snack, I found myself drawn to the women's conversations, because I was quickly confused about the differences between wrenches and fittings and building codes in this family of plumbers. This, for me, this experience of being in between, luckily did not cause distress. It wasn't an anxious or pressured place for me, but I did notice things, the different ways people interacted in the world. And I think I knew that for many people, they find themselves somewhere in between all of this too. In between the general assumptions of identity, of what one is supposed to act like or be knowledgeable about, somewhere in between the expectations that change from one generation to another, somewhere in between it all, depending on the context. It could feel comfortable or it could feel stifling. The poet in this Jewish litany writes, "We are all twilight people. We can never be fully labeled or defined. We are many identities and loves, many genders and none. We are in between roles and intersections of histories, or between place and place. We are crisscrossed paths of memory and destination. Streaks of light swirled together. We are neither day nor night. We are both, neither, all." The work for a transformed world that acknowledges this, one where people can find their identity and celebrate it without fear, and celebrate the broadest understanding of life and love and identity as sacred, as holy. Sometimes that work and that demand for change takes a form of major defiance of norms or expectations or laws or typical and rigid boundaries of identity. And sometimes it is small and simple things where one just moves just outside the expected to create a different space for themselves, to be sure, and almost certainly to open and create a space for others too. As Amy shared with the children, there are broad and varied histories often forgotten or neglected, as the idea of a nuclear family became the stated norm in much more recent history. And we have story after story throughout culture and time of boundary-defined identities that help us imagine our humanity, our existence, in some of the most creative, generative, and expansive, liberating, loving ways. You likely know some experience, whether yourself or a loved one, of being placed in some identity box of who you are, or what you believe, or what you must be like because of gender or race or age or nationality or profession, sexual orientation, gender identity. You might imagine, for a simple example, ever since I wanted to become a minister which was basically since I was like 4 years old or something. It became more clear when I was studying for it. People who didn't know me so well or had assumptions about what that meant, it felt as if I was a traveling confessional booth. People apologizing to me constantly about a curse word or about not going to church or about having a beer or about lying or 1,000 other things that mostly I did not care about. And if they were apologizing for it, clearly I had a lot to apologize for too. And some of it I thought, you should probably feel bad about that, whether I'm a minister or not, but be that as it may. And you likely know those same things in your life to lesser or probably much greater degrees about how you're treated or talked to or assumed to act. And for many, of course, they are based in much more oppressive and discriminatory ways. And I bet you also know spaces or groups or people where you feel like your soul has enough room, enough space to be authentic when you know you're with your people, to be free and open, to be honest in a way that you feel no need to prove anything or define anything, to be anything in particular, act any certain way, but you know in your very body, you can feel it, the way your breath eases. Where is the center, writes the poet Anne Bushnell. Is it the place where the soul puts up its feet, closes its eyes, and knows that no harm will come? If so, then when such a place is found, they write, the soul sits down and is home. Do you know that place where your soul sets down and is home? A place of no harm, a place when all things considered is about as much safety for the soul as your heart can imagine. Sometimes to create spaces like that in a rigid world, we find ourselves in in-between places. Why not rejoice as we resist, writes the poet, responding to the regular question if pride was more protest or party, rooted in a riot against police brutality and blossoming into a demand for the right to love and joy. Bring your policy demands, they write. Bring your glitter, your broken heart, your rainbow socks, your tender hope for change. There is a gift that comes with twilight, that in-between space that I most often notice in spring and summer evenings, even in the natural world, as the temperature and the light changes. This shifting light often causes me to notice the changing of seasons, or even through the haze of northern wildfires this week, the shift in the tone and the hue of the sun. I'm reminded about how important the atmosphere around us is to how we experience the world. I love the way the natural world can help us imagine space enough to be held and free. For many, the whisper of tree leaves in the breeze, or the constant companions of waves breaking across sand, or the call of birds, or the smell of lilac, something that draws our attention to take a breath, to pause, to notice beauty, to create, which is our monthly theme. In one sense, is to bring something into being, and in a broader sense, it can simply mean being present, being human, being free. Bringing yourself into full, free being, existing freely, is an act of constant creation. So I want to try something together. A little context first, to help any nervous jitters or anxious feelings you have about us trying something together. In a small group gathering years ago, before going to a rally with many other clergy colleagues, the leader wanted to root that group of people, many of whom did not know each other, were from different denominations, different places, but we had shared values, and they wanted us to root a sense of shared experience together, so that when we were out in the world, we had an embodied sense of trust, of connection, and awareness in precarious protest situations that were possible. How they did this in this group of faith leaders was with song. What struck me in that time was that it mattered so much not what the song was, though we had to pick something that worked for that whole interfaith group, but how we sung it. That created such a difference in the resonance, such a difference in the feel of that space. Our shared breath literally created a collective feeling that musicians and choirs know the feeling of that. So if we attend to this familiar song with a sense of resonance, I think you know this song, This Little Light, but it's how you sing it that makes a difference. So 3 ways we're going to sing it. Start by holding a little light. Pretend you have a small flame in your hand. Your hand is now a chalice. And sometimes song starts as affirmation and preservation of self, like prayer or meditation. So sing it soft and slow with me. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine. Start soft and slow in prayer. And then in this group, we had to get our marching movement going, but still quiet. If you remember some of the movements from the civil rights movement and others, they often would start in collective prayer on the street before they would march across the bridge or wherever. So this is one of the few times I'll let you keep the beat on 1 and 3 on this song. It's a musical joke, and it's okay if you don't get it. But 1 and 3, we started, so if you can make it with your feet or a hand or even your heartbeat. And it is a strong, deep, resonant, but still soft song. And that's when it becomes protest. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. So we were rooted first in prayer and preservation of self, that you felt safe and reminded that you are sacred. And then in collective demand for a different world, that lights should have freedom to shine in all their variety and diversity and beauty. And then, rooted in that, self and solidarity, then you move to celebration and a demand for love and joy. That's when beats 2 and 4 come in, right? So I invite you to sing with me, and I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and you pick up the pace and you get out on the street and you demand the birthright to love and joy. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And then back to the beginning. This little light of mine, some harmonies, choir. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. There's a power, you can be seated. There's a power that happens in collective breath and song, rooted in a reminder of your sacredness that you protect, rooted in a sense of demanded solidarity in a world transformed, and rooted in a deep sense of joy. That's how community is sustained and created. Or in the words that are attributed to John Murray, Universalist, who said, "You may possess only a small light, but uncover it and let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of humanity. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Do not push them deeper into their despair, but preach the kindness and everlasting love of God, of Gaia, of justice." Because what is religion, what is faith or spirituality, if it is not about the ability for the soul to be free? It's in those in-between spaces, not just this or that, but creating space where there is room enough for us all and for all of us. The hymn is in your order of service. It's called Beyond All Naming, to Austin's favorite hymn tune, Thaxted, Jupiter. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing. invite you, as you are comfortable, to place a hand on your heart or toward the sky or earth in gratitude. Go yonder, and gather the people. Give them not hell, but courage and hope. Give them something of the love you have found here, and tell all the people that love is our home. Amen.